Okay, in the last video, I talked to you about the famous quote from Dr. Martin Luther King, which is,
I think we've got to see that a riot is the language of the unheard. And what is it that America has failed to hear?
and that had a lot of resonance to me right now. What is it that America has failed to hear? I thought that maybe the implication of me putting that out there was that America is failing to hear that there is a widespread inequity in how policing works in this country. That's well documented in Michelle Alexander's book, The New Jim Crow, and it's well documented by a lot of people. But actually, the second part of the quote is what I want to talk about today, because I kind of sidestepped it in the last video, and there's actually really good reasons to examine it. So, as a refresher, he said,
"It has failed to hear that the economic plight of the Negro poor has worsened over the last few years."
And because of the kind of antiquated language, I thought, let's just not, I just didn't engage with it at all. But I ran into something on Twitter. What am I showing you? Okay, so the title of this article, Americans Misperceive Racial Economic Inequality. Equality, rather. And there's a lot of details in this study that are really interesting, but what I want to show you right now is this graph, which I ran into on Twitter. We all know that in the past, African Americans made no money at all because they were slaves, and now they're making money. How close do you think we are towards equality, economically speaking? And if you look at this graph, it's like 25-30% off. People are wrong, generally, about how much progress we've actually made. So what does that mean? That means if you are a human in the United States and you have an idea in your head about how racially equal the economic situation of African Americans and white Americans is, you're off by 25% on average. Now, granted, maybe you're one of those lucky people that like happens to have it, you nailed it on the head, but like statistically speaking, everyone's wrong by 25%, 30% about how much actual inequality there is. A couple of notes, 3 notes, and then I'll leave you alone. Note number 1 is there's a couple of sobering facts about this, and the first is that if you look, the benefits and college wages and high school wages, that's hourly wages for people, for Black Americans who have a college degree and who don't have a college degree but have a high school diploma. The actual progress is negative, so that's a terrifying fact to think about. But there's another social fact that I'm struggling to articulate exactly how to say it. Early in the beginning of the study, they say, we also expected that rich white people would think that they were, they would overestimate equality. And the reasons for that is kind of simple. You know, a rich white person, one, lives in a bubble, but 2, does run into some like pretty successful African American people. Let me try and break that down. What they thought was, they thought, I'll just read it. Specifically, we predicted that high-income white participants would be more likely to overestimate racial equality compared with their low-status counterparts. That is, low-income white participants and Black participants of either income category. This prediction was also supported. Okay, so let's break that down. What does that mean? That means actually rich white people, the left, that like these Twitter arguments that I got on the people that are causing the, according to the right, like the liberal media, the high left is what's causing the racial divide in America, which makes no sense. But that actually is not supported by the study, because those very people that we're looking to and we're saying, oh my gosh, you're being more dramatic about race, they're actually more rosy-eyed. They think that we've done better than we actually have. Those participants in the study think that we're closer to racial equality than we are. So in no uncertain terms, if I can say this properly, what that means is that the very people who are being accused of over-dramatizing the problem actually don't even fully understand the extent of the problem. They're off by 30%. If the average is 30%, they're off by more than 30% in their estimates of how close we are to economic equality. So let's wrap up. What's the point of this video? The point of this video is there is socioeconomic data to back up the fact that African Americans make less money than white people. That shouldn't be something that I mean, I guess it's well known, but like there it is. But the frightening statistic is that people know that gap is closing, but we're wrong about how close we really are. We're wrong by not just a little, we're wrong by like 30%. In fact, in some areas that progress is negative, and the people that are supposedly the ones that are being most dramatic about it, they actually are most wrong about how close we really are. We're further, in their eyes, we're further away. Wrapping this all up, I have like a bulleted list of things, but like here's actually a better, if you just read, let's just read it. So, discussion. An important, often overlooked fact of economic inequality in the United States is that it is a product of historical and present-day forms of racism, labor, housing, and other policies and practices that have systematically disadvantaged racial ethnic minorities in their pursuit of economic opportunities. One result of these historical and ongoing forces is a vast and persistent economic disparity between black and white families in the United States, of which Americans seem largely unaware. Our results suggest a systematic tendency to perceive greater progress toward racial economic equality than has actually been achieved, largely driven by overestimates of the current levels of equality. So, back at the beginning of the video, I quoted Dr. King, and he said that what we have failed to perceive is that there is a economic disparity that has occurred in the African American population. And I wanted to dismiss that fact because I wanted to talk about police violence, but we can't even dismiss that fact because, oh look, it's still there. And it's still there in a way that we are still refusing to hear.